A Chinese government report warns of a coming confrontation with the United States over the coronavirus outbreak. Reuters has reported May 4th, 2020, an internal Chinese report warns that Beijing faces a rising wave of hostility in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak that could tip relations with the United States into confrontation. People familiar with the paper told Reuters. This report that was presented last month, two top Beijing leaders, including the President Xi Jinping, concluded that global anti-China sentiment is at its highest since the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown. As a result, Beijing faces a wave of anti-China sentiment led by the United States in the aftermath of the pandemic and needs to be prepared in a worst-case scenario for armed confrontation between the global powers. The report was drawn up by the China Institutes of Contemporary International Relations. This is a think tank affiliated with the Ministry of State Security, China's top intelligent body. Now, this report goes on to say that relations between China and the United States are widely seen to be at their worst point in decades, with deepening mistrust and friction points from U.S. allegations of unfair trade, technology practices, disputes with Hong Kong, Taiwan, and of course the territories in the South China Sea, which this ministry has been warning for years now that the Bible prophesies of a dispute in the South China Sea, in Numbers the 24th chapter, that's going to lead to the coming breakup of NATO. It is widely believed in Beijing that the United States wants to contain a rising China, which has become more assertive globally as its economy has grown. The report described to Reuters warned that anti-China sentiment sparked by the coronavirus could fuel resistance to China's Belt and Road infrastructure investment projects, and that Washington could step up financial and military support for regional allies, making the security situation in Asia more volatile. Now, 3 decades ago, this report goes on to say, in the aftermath of Tiananmen Square, the United States and many Western governments imposed sanctions against China, including banning or restricting arms sales and technology transfers. China is far more powerful nowadays. Xi has revamped China's military strategy to create a fighting force equipped to win modern wars. He's expanding China's air and naval reach in a challenge to more than 70 years of U.S. military dominance in Asia. Now, at the end of this article, it says here that China is facing a growing backlash from critics who have called to hold Beijing accountable for its role in the pandemic. Trump has cut off all funding to the WHO, calling it very China-centric. Australia's government is calling for an international investigation into the origins and spread of the virus. And last month, France summoned China's ambassador to protest a publication on the website of China's embassy that criticized the Western handling of the coronavirus. So here we're seeing tensions rise between China and the United States, between China and the other Western allies, primarily of the NATO alliance. And we have been saying for years now that there's going to come a confrontation between China and NATO. And it will lead to the breakup of NATO, as we see here in Numbers, the 24th chapter, verse 24. It says here, and ships shall come from the coast of Kittim. Now, if you read our booklet, China and Prophecy, we will show you that Kittim is China. And here we see ships coming from the coast of China. That's the South China Sea. And it is a naval attack, and shall afflict Asher, which we have identified as modern-day Germany, and shall afflict Eber. Those are the Hebrew peoples, the United States, the British Commonwealth of Nations, and the peoples of northwestern Europe. And they share a common enemy, which is China. And here we see Germany and the Hebrew peoples together. Obviously, this is NATO. So here we see a naval attack against NATO, and it's going to lead to the end of NATO. As it says in Daniel, the 11th chapter, verse 45, he, the king of the north, which heads NATO, it says, he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The end of NATO. And in Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, verse 14, it speaks of this same prophecy, the affliction that's coming upon Israel. And Israel is modern-day United States and the British Commonwealth of Nations. I urge you to read our booklet, The United States and Britain in Prophecy, and you will see where we are identified in the pages of the Bible. And it says here in verse 14 of Jeremiah 30, all your allies, it says lovers should read allies, have forgotten you. They seek you not. So here we see the NATO alliance break apart. For I have wounded you with a wound of an enemy, with the chastisement of a cruel one, for the multitude of your iniquity, because your sins were increased. Why criest thou for thine affliction? So there is that affliction against the NATO allies. A deadly blow is going to come to NATO, where it says, all your allies have forgotten you. And who is the head of NATO? The United States of America. So here we see NATO break apart. Reporting here from the studios at BICOG Media, this is Peter Salemi.